So have you ever told yourself, I'm just going to have one drink or I'm just going to have a couple, and then you wake up the next day, you feel like absolute shit, and you're saying stuff like, oh, I swear I'm never going to do that again, or whatever it is that you might say. I'm going to explain why that happens and what you need to do to prepare yourself and help yourself not fall into this trap, okay? And that's exactly what it is. It's called the anticipation trap. And it is basically your brain playing a trick on you that you are going to get some sort of reward, and that reward is never able to live up to the anticipation that your brain gives you. So what happens is when you drink alcohol, feel-good chemicals are released in the brain. Let's talk about dopamine, okay? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is really essential for human survival because it is what tells us this particular activity is good for our survival. Eating good food, getting out in the sun, exercise, having sex, all these things release dopamine because these are things that the human species has to do in order to continue to survive and thrive. All right, so what happens with alcohol and other drugs is they increase the level of dopamine way more than any natural substance or event possibly can. And we can get into all the science of the percentages and things like this, but I don't really think that's very necessary because the point of this is to talk about how this matters to us on a practical day-to-day basis. So just know this. When you eat your favorite food, you're going to have dopamine released in your brain. Drinking alcohol is like, I don't know, 300 times the amount of dopamine that's released compared to when you eat your favorite food. So what happens is your brain starts to misidentify drinking as something that is good for you. So therefore, your brain also remembers certain circumstances, certain times, certain places, certain people, whatever, that maybe you drink when you're around. So if there's like a restaurant that you go to every Friday night after work and you have a few beers with some of your coworkers, if you go to that restaurant on a Tuesday with your family, just by coincidence, your brain is probably going to be releasing some dopamine in anticipation for the drinks it thinks you're going to have because your brain associates that restaurant with you drinking alcohol. So this is what can cause people to have relapses and have slip-ups or whatever the case may be. Now, let's just say that, you have been drinking pretty heavily for a while and you have a bit of a drinking problem. There's going to be probably a lot more things that would trigger that dopamine release in anticipation of drinking alcohol than there would be for someone who maybe just has the occasional glass of wine after dinner. And that's kind of what I want to focus on. So your brain is going to release dopamine before you ever even have the drink. And how dopamine and drinking work is your brain, you drink, okay, so you drink alcohol and your brain releases dopamine. But then there's these counter chemicals, these stress chemicals like cortisol that get released, and those cause things like stress, anxiety. They basically are uppers, okay, if you can imagine it like that. And so what happens is the dopamine levels will go down. So then you start to crash. So you have to have another drink in order to get those dopamine levels back up. But then your body, boom, counteracts it by sending in more cortisol and stress hormones, right? And this is basically a balancing cycle that continues to go on as you continue to drink. And the problem is you can never get back to the level of where you were during that first one or two drinks. every drink you have after that is not going to be able to quite get you to that level, but that's what you're chasing. So to tie all this together, the same thing starts to happen eventually before you ever even drink. Before you drink, your body, your brain thinks you're going to drink. It goes ahead and starts releasing dopamine. So then when you actually go have the drink, you do not get that same level of dopamine that your brain has already released in anticipation. So what happens is you actually spend the evening chasing that good feeling that you were anticipating getting, and you don't ever get there. However, because of the amount of alcohol you're consuming, you're still doing the damage to your brain and to your body. That's why you keep drinking more than you said you were going to, because you never really get to that feeling that you thought you were going to get to. And then the next day, you have pounded yourself with so much alcohol that you just feel like complete shit. And then you have to recover. For some people, you may bounce back a little quicker. If you're young, especially if you don't have, too much of a drinking problem, especially. But the older you get and the more that your body has been beaten with these substances like alcohol, man, the harder and harder and harder it's going to be to recover and feel good. And it just becomes an absolutely vicious cycle. So, couple things here to, try and help break it. Obviously, just, not drinking is the best. But if it was that easy, then there probably would be nobody that has a problem, right? So, obviously, if you can avoid drinking, do that. If you are going to drink, a couple things that you can do is delay your first drink for as long as you can. Try to play a game with yourself. If you're going out, say I'm going to have 5 conversations, right, with different people before I have my first drink. What hopefully will happen is you get carried away and you start having such a good time without even drinking. Before you know it, you're deep into the night. And you might even realize I actually didn't even need the alcohol to have a good time. That's like a best case scenario. But either way, kick the can down the road as much as you can. Talk to 5 people, 6 people, 7 people. I don't know. Have some sort of number. Play some sort of game. Wait till you see like 2 redheaded people walk in before you have your. I don't know. Whatever it might be, just play some sort of game to delay having that first drink as long as possible. When you do drink, try to have 2 soda waters or 2 non-alcoholic drinks of some sort in between every drink you have. So if you have a beer, have 2 soda waters before you have your next beer, or whatever it is that you like to drink, ginger ale, plain water, whatever. A non-alcoholic beer, is a great option. So do something like that. The other thing that you can do, and this is what I would recommend the most, especially if you're really trying to stop drinking, is have someone that is your accountability partner, for lack of a better word. And what you can do is let this person know what you're going through. First of all, you're not going to be judged nearly as much as you think. I was personally so worried. I hid that I had a drinking problem for years. I thought that I was hiding it. People knew. People aren't as stupid and clueless as you might think they are. If you are at the point where alcohol is causing problems in your life, there's probably people that know it and maybe they just haven't called you out on it yet, or maybe they're just not 100% sure what the problem is. But I tried to hide it from people for a very long time before, eventually it was just too obvious. But what I was getting at though is people will appreciate that you come to them and tell them something like this, and they will actually support you. I mean, people love to be confided in. People love to be looked at as like um, a positive influence in someone else's life. So if you reach out to your friend or a family member, whatever the case may be, maybe even a coworker, and you let them know what you're dealing with, and then tell them, hey, look, there might be some times where I have a craving and I need to call somebody to talk to get through that, so I don't actually give into that drinking. People are going to love that. Like, those people are going to become whoever that is that you ask to do that is going to become your biggest fan, your biggest supporter. People love to help other people. It is just a human desire. Okay, so play on that, use it to your advantage. and reach out. Let somebody know, hey, I've got a problem. This is the problem. I may need your help in this way. Because trust me, they would much rather help you by talking to you on the phone at 10 o'clock at night when you are thinking about having a drink than, getting a call from the police station saying that you've been arrested and they need to come bail you out of jail, right? So anyways, that's what I would say to do is have a few tricks up your sleeve, kick the can down the road as far as you can, try to not drink for as long as you can throughout the night, have non-alcoholic drinks in between actual alcoholic drinks if you are going to drink, and then also have an accountability partner. Have someone that you can reach out to that knows the situation, that you can trust, and that you can talk to when you have one of those triggering events going on. But just remember that if anything, I want to encapsulate this as the main statement of this episode is that the actual reward never, ever, ever, ever will live up to the expectation of that reward in the case of drinking. No matter what you tell yourself, no matter what you think, nothing positive will come out of it. Okay, so it's just your brain playing a trick on you because it has incorrectly misidentified alcohol as something that you need. And we all know, especially when we're clear headed and sober minded, that we don't need it. And as a matter of fact, it's the opposite. We actually should not ever have it, right? If possible. So um, find someone. If you need help, reach out. There are resources. All of my contact and socials can be found here on my YouTube channel. So yeah, if you're someone that is struggling and you keep falling into this trap of drinking, thinking you're gonna only have a couple, and then having way more, and then feeling like crap, and then recovering, and then doing the same thing again a week or a month later, just talk to someone before it's too late, because as long as you get it addressed, you can undo and redo and fix and heal everything. It's never too late.